Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Holly MacKenna, Integrative Psychiatrist, here for the Big Easiest Ways to Wellness. And this week, we have early voting starting tomorrow. So I thought it would be super fun and exciting to talk about everything you need to know about voting in Louisiana, because it's a lot of stuff. And our state's a little wacky with some things compared to other states. So I invited a political consultant, Ms. Katie Williams, to come on and talk to us about all the things when it comes to voting. So Katie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here and talk about all the things that are on the ballot this fall.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I feel like this year especially, I am just really excited to get in line, excited to do my thing. I've always felt, for me personally, that voting is super important. My parents are immigrants. I've talked on the show about that before. And so I was always raised that voting is really something that is important. And so, yeah, I feel like more people are feeling that way lately. So having them know all they need to know is going to be super important and great. And I love educating people. So why don't we start with just telling us a little bit about you and what kind of led to you being so interested in New Orleans politics and educating folks on this.
Yeah, so I actually moved to New Orleans 15 years ago and went straight out of grad school into the mayoral administration. So I worked in the Cultural Economy Office for Mayor Landrieu and saw just front and center like how policy affects people's lives, good policy, bad policy, and then just kind of the process of how things get executed and how, what the city council does and how it impacts what the administration can do. And so that was kind of my first entrance into the whole political world. I left that job when the administration changed and just have remained active with organizations and candidates and really passionate about how important our local politics is to the everyday lives of people. So
Awesome.
Now I'm currently helping candidates get their campaigns up and going. I kind of call myself like a candidate startup or a boot camp. So just helping candidates get from like 0 to 1 with all the things they need to have a successful run.
Oh, I love that. I love that it just builds so much more excitement when new people are coming in to try to get into offices and bringing new ideas. I think that's always a good thing, no matter whether it's politics or the job world or what have you. It's always great to have new ideas. So that's wonderful. You're helping people.
I feel like politics too is one of those things that's like very insulated. So if you've never run before, you don't know someone who's run, you don't even really know where to start, like how to start a campaign committee or how to raise money or fundraise. And so just really coming alongside those candidates, especially first-time candidates. And I love working with women to really give them the tools they need to have a good start and good foundation.
Awesome. So in your view, what is the importance of voting? Like, I'm sure folks look at, they see this on the news. There's so much going on with the pandemic. Folks are really feeling overwhelmed. Like, why bother sometimes? I'm sure folks feel like there's just so much going on. Why, nobody cares what I think. What is it that you feel like is important about voting?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, this particular election, because I think for the first time for a lot of people, they see the importance of their voice being heard and having their voice at the table in a way that maybe they were able to bypass or ignore or not really pay attention to. And like I said earlier, like the local elections is something that I really get excited about. The president's every 4 years, but in Louisiana, Lord, we vote like twice a year sometimes, maybe 3 times. Right. There's just always so many different elections and it's overwhelming. It's hard to keep up with. So I was really excited when I got the invitation to come talk to you because I think particularly this election has so much on the ballot. There's 72 candidates that aren't president on our ballot this November. And so it's a lot to dig through. It's a lot to try to understand. And so I think when you really get down to like who you're electing as your judges or your school board representatives or your city council, which isn't on the ballot this November, but those are the elected officials that you can call, that you can email, that you can see at Rouse's, that are going to be really making those decisions and those legislative moves that are going to affect your day in and day out life.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point because we get so distracted, I think, by the drama of the national race, for lack of a better term for it, that we forget that, you're right. Like if something happens in our regular lives, even on like looking on our neighborhood app, oftentimes what we're talking about there is affected by the school board or the judge that's involved or what have you, that, people may not give as much thought to those races.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's so important. And not only just to have that educated vote, but to hold your elected leaders accountable after you voted for them. If they ran on a platform of, diverting mental health, people with mental health challenges out of jail and the hospital to like outpatient treatment, like, are they actually doing that work that they said they were going to do now that they're in that position? Which is a lot easier to do when they live in your neighborhood or in your, you have that smaller community.
Yeah, absolutely.
More so than your state representative or
right.
senator or president.
Yeah. Because I'm sure folks have had the experience of maybe getting upset about a certain thing that's going on at the state or higher up level and writing a letter and then getting that form email back that doesn't say a lot.
Exactly.
Whereas like, if it's the school board or something local and you happen to know where they go grocery shopping and so you can go find them, that's a lot different. Right?
Or just that their offices are a lot smaller and so you can get them on the phone.
Right.
Or go to a community meeting. Maybe not so much in COVID, but yeah.
Yeah,
normally.
For sure. So if folks are looking at voting and haven't done so already, because I know folks are already starting to vote by mail, what are the different ways people can vote here in Louisiana?
Yeah, so you have a couple options. I am a big advocate of early voting. And the Secretary of State has actually expanded the days for that this year because of COVID. And so you have a lot of opportunities. It starts tomorrow, the 17th, the 16th. And goes through the 27th. So it's every day from, I think it is, I wrote it down. Let's see.
I want to say like 8 to 7. Does that sound right?
8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Yep. And it's every day except Sundays. And the thing that's really cool this year is that they actually opened up the Smoothie King Center for early voting as a location.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of fun. And it's a large capacity venue that can provide a lot of opportunity for individual polling machines with good spacing. I think what I heard was that it was like one of the negotiations out of the NBA strike that the players asked for from the owners was to be able to open up those facilities in cities for early voting. So it's a really cool thing that I probably would vote there just because you get to go to the Smoothie King Center and
right. Especially if folks missed out going to games, during the NBA season because they were in the bubble. Some of us got on, got ourselves on the little camera, so we were kind of there, but not really. So or if you've just never been able to go, like what a cool way to go see where they play, and so, what a way for the players to give back to their communities. I love that that was part of what they wanted to have happen.
So I think the thing that's also great is that you're right there with City Hall, which is the other main early voting location. So you could kind of gauge the lines and see which one looks shorter, and kind of spend your time prioritize, which one looks shorter and how. And then obviously for other areas of the city, Algiers Courthouse, there's a Lake Vista Community Center out in the east, and then also the voting machine warehouse on Chef Mentor. So there's 5-6 locations to choose from every day, 8 to 7, for the next week and a half.
And you can really choose any one, right? Like you don't have to go to the one that's closest to you as far as early voting.
Right. It's not like election day where you have your precinct that you have to go to. It's citywide, anyone that's most convenient.
Yeah. Or you've heard has the shortest lines, whatever. Or maybe the best snacks or best stickers. I don't really know. Whatever.
No, the sticker is such a badge of honor. I think it'll be even more so this year, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So for those who have, like my mom is an older person. Hi, Mom. Or have maybe been exposed to COVID or are worried about exposure. There's also a mail option, right?
Right. Yes. I hate to even encourage the mail-in option if you have the health and the ability to go vote in person, because there is so many opportunities with the early voting. But you can vote by mail, but I think you have to have a doctor's note, or it's like people who are incapacitated or disabled or have an underlying health condition. But as I said, I think the Secretary of State has made it more difficult in Louisiana than in other states to really get that approval for a vote by mail ballot.
Right.
And so again, if you're able, mask up, bring your hand sanitizer, do whatever you need to do to feel comfortable, and go vote early.
Yeah, for sure. But if you have like an elderly parent or someone who maybe is in a nursing home and didn't think they'd be able to vote, that is an option that
100%, yeah,
is available, that you should definitely look at the website with the state. I think I have it somewhere here, where folks can see about that, right?
Yeah, and that ballot has to be returned the day before election day. So you want to make sure that you mail it early. As soon as you know how you're going to vote, just go ahead and fill it out and drop it in the mail. There's no reason to hold on to it.
Yeah, because it's not by, like in some states, it's by what they stamp, but for us, it actually has to be received by voting day, right?
By November 2nd, actually the day before.
Oh, okay. I didn't even realize that. Ooh, yeah. I learned something today. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I personally am going to go vote early on Monday, and I'll do my best to stream to folks so they can see what the process is like as much as I can. I don't think I can do that like in the actual ballot booth, but at least you can see the line. Yeah, I think that early voting is a great way to do it. Like you said, it allows for some flexibility as far as where you go, the different times, a different day. If you have a day off and you know that's something you can do with your kids, whatever way works best for you, it's probably the easiest. And then, of course, the actual day, November 3rd, you would go, like you said, to your precinct, wherever you're assigned to vote there. And I think it's the same hours.
It is, yeah.
8 to 7. Okay.
I think it may actually be till 8 p.m.
Oh, is it?
I think it goes a little bit longer. But again, yeah, similar process. I think again, just getting their votes in as soon as you can, get it taken care of. Don't wait till the last minute, because you hate to be in line. I think I've seen on the news, like, people waiting in like 11 hours in Georgia to cast their ballot. And so I don't know about you. I don't really want to spend 11 hours. So I'm going to try to go probably like tomorrow or Monday. And then if the lines are really, really long, I still have, 5 days, 10 days to like try again.
Right. And keep in mind, like you've mentioned, that if one line is longer and you're near enough to another site, you can always go to that other site. We saw in the news, like you said, that in Georgia, there were people who reported 11-hour waits. And then I saw a friend who was also in Georgia. It took him 20 minutes, and he's near Atlanta as well. So it just depends on like where you happen to go. And if you have transportation available to be able to look for a site that maybe has not as long of a line, maybe try there. But, if you think there might be a wait, bring a snack. Bring your umbrella if you're gonna be in the sun, bring a seat, do what you got to do to get your voice heard. And kind of speaking of that, I've seen there's actually some rules that people may not be aware of as far as what you can wear and how you can kind of represent yourself and things you can bring and not bring when you're going to vote. You want to talk a little bit about those things? Yeah.
Definitely. So you can't wear anything to the polls that's in support of a specific candidate. There's rules around electioneering is what they call it. So you can't do any campaigning or electioneering within 600 feet of a poll. And so they consider a t-shirt, a hat, a mask, anything that has like a logo or shows your support for a specific candidate, you can't actually wear into the polls. Actually, last fall, I worked for a candidate who ran for state rep, and I'd been out all morning waving signs and knocking doors and trying to remind people to get out and vote. And so I just didn't think much about it. And I went afterwards to go vote. And I actually had to leave, and I didn't have anything else to wear. So I just turned my shirt inside out and was able to go back in and vote. But I think about people with the election this year, you may wait in line for a couple hours and then get up to the front and they tell you, oh, I'm sorry, you can't wear that shirt. You have to wear a mask, but you can't wear that one. So then you have to kind of think ahead and just have a plan for what you're going to wear and that it's not going to break any of those rules. Right.
And then if you are waiting in line, it ends up being that you're still in line and it's 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock when it's shutting down, you stay in line, right? Like you don't.
Yeah. If you were in line when the polls close, they have to let you vote. So don't leave. You may be there for a little bit longer, but if you're in line by the time the polls close, then they have to get through the line and get you to the front to cast your ballot.
Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, so New Orleans, we have, as we've mentioned, you said 70 something.
72 candidates that are not the president.
And then New Orleans is a little unique. I've always been told by my lawyer friends as far as our Constitution and some of our laws and things of that nature. And so we have, I think, 7 different amendments that are on the ballot.
Right. Yeah. So I sent some resources. So my favorite resource for just like knowing your ballot is the Go Vote app. So you can download the app and you put in your address, or you can search by your name and address, and then it'll pull up your specific ballot. And it's amazing because you can check the boxes and like decide as you are researching now until election day or until you plan to early vote, who you're going to vote for. And it saves that information. So you just take your phone, or I always like to print mine, and then I just carry it in with me to the polls and just like go back and forth and checking like, okay, so for this race, I'm choosing this person, and you mark it on your ballot. And that way you have it all laid out in front of you. There's no guesswork. And so that's a big
on your cellular data. If you do it on your phone, I've learned that the hard way when I have
you lose all your info
on my phone, and then I don't have internet access, and so I'm like quickly changing it to be on my data so I can look at it. So just keep that in mind.
That's a good word. Yeah. And so again, that app has been like a go-to for me since I've been voting, because you can just carry it with you. If you have some spare time, you can research a candidate. And then when you have made your decision, you just like log it in and it just saves it for you. So it's not even that you have to sit all at once and figure out the whole thing. You can kind of take some time, a little here and there as you have it, to figure out your ballot and who you want to support.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, to your point earlier, like there's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different types of judges on our ballot, which who even knew there were 6 different types of judges to start with. And so just really educating yourself and figuring out what each of those judges do and who you think is going to be the best person to execute that role. And so I did a little research on my own already to kind of figure out why we have so many judges and what they each do. So if we have time, I'll do a quick little rundown of like the different types. So the one that I knew nothing about was the magistrate judge, which it turns out in my opinion is like kind of one of the more important ones. So think of it as like they are the pre-trial services. So they're the ones who are determining whether a criminal defendant is detained or released on bond. They're determining what that bond price is. And so for this race, you actually have one of the candidates who's trying to just do away with cash bail altogether, because they feel like it just keeps people incarcerated before they even see their trial. And then they're doing like mediations, they're resolving disputes around discovery before trial. So there's a lot of like pre-trial services. Think of it as like your first step in the judicial system is the magistrate judge. Civil district court, again, civil cases, less of them have juries. So in that sense, the judge is kind of the keeps order, follows the law, and then also determines whether that person is guilty or what's the word looking for? Innocent. So they have a lot more kind of power, if you will, than like a criminal court judge who's going to do more of, instructing the jury, presiding over the courtroom, responsible, like making sure that the law is being carried out, is more of like a criminal court judge.
Okay.
And then there's like a couple different sections. So there's like a juvenile court, and then a family court, which is mostly like divorces and child custody cases.
Okay.
So you have all these judges covering all areas of our judicial system. And then the last one is the municipal court judge, which is what it sounds like: traffic tickets, DWIs, and misdemeanors, summons. So a little less intense of a courtroom, I would think, but honestly, one of probably the higher court loads. Right. If you think about the amount of cases that are coming through that courtroom. So it's a lot to think about.
It is,
a lot to kind of dig through.
Like what you've broken down, because that's going to help when you're looking at what these different candidates are saying they want to do. knowing what the environment is where they're going to be. So, that's going to maybe change how we view things. And when people are thinking about what their values are and what's important to them in those particular court environments, who do they think will be best to do that job? So, and if they're not happy with how a court is behaving currently, maybe considering a change, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Sure. And so I think like with these races and races like school board, I think a lot of times people say, oh, well, I'm not going to be in trouble with the law or visit a courtroom, or I don't have school age children, or my kids go to private school. Like, what does it matter to me? Like, why do I care who those people are? But I think the thing to remember is that every one of those systems impacts our community, whether it's a well-educated workforce or a great economic drive for making sure we have keep our locals here and employed versus, how our criminal justice system functions. And if people are moving quickly through it or sitting in jail for a really long time, all of that costs our taxpayer dollars. So you want to really be aware of how your tax dollars are being spent and you, like you said earlier, use your voice to vote for the person you think will do the best job.
Absolutely. And then if folks are looking at these amendments, which anytime there's an amendment, my head starts spinning because I never, it's all in legalese. And if you're,
they don't make it easy.
It's really used to reading those things. What are some good resources to figure that out and kind of decide what you're?
I'm big when it comes to resources. I love the League of Women Voters.
Okay.
Because, and just generally speaking, organizations that provide information, that they're just giving you a questionnaire they ask the candidates to fill out, asking the important questions so that you can kind of come to your own conclusion about who you think will be the best person. I think those organizations are the ones that I lean to educate myself and to understand what's at stake. There are a lot of organizations that endorse, but I have found in my experience that there's always kind of an underbelly to that. So sometimes endorsement organizations have a fee. So they may endorse a candidate, but then that candidate has to pay X amount of dollars to actually receive the endorsement or to end up on the ballot. And so you may have a candidate that is really strong, that is probably the great choice, but they maybe don't have the funds to pay the $500 or sometimes as much as $2,500 to be on that ballot. And so you don't ever see that they got that endorsement. Or there's just some organizations that have long political ties with candidates, whether they're an incumbent or it's a family run situation, that they already have decided that they're going to endorse before they even start the process. And so again, I just love the organizations like League of Women Voters. There's the Urban League, organizations that are just putting out information, telling you what's important, and then letting you kind of make your own decision.
Right, for sure. Yeah. And it's interesting. I think I don't know if it's the League of Women Voters or the Ballotpedia, where I saw that it actually shows how much has been spent on the different amendments, which was really interesting to see that some had zero spent, some had hundreds of thousands of dollars spent.
And Ballotpedia is really great too, because they give you kind of plain English. If you vote yes, this is what you're saying. If you vote no, this is what you are saying. And so, like you said, the legalese of those amendments, oftentimes it's impossible to even know what you're agreeing to. You're I think they're saying if I vote yes, that I want this to happen, when in reality, it may be the opposite. And so that Ballotpedia link that you just shared is so great because it gives you a breakdown of what it means, how it's going to affect. And then if you vote yes, this is the outcome. And if you vote against it, this is what the outcome will be. And unfortunately, they're never easy. Nothing's ever that clean and black and white and straightforward. There's always pros and cons to every decision. But it's best, it's great to have the information and to make your best guess, your best choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I've talked on the show before about my values, and I've shared with watchers, what is important to me. As I said earlier, voting is super important to me because of my background, and I'm an integrative psychiatrist. So something else that's kind of obvious, hopefully, that's important to me is mental health care and how people are taken care of by our officials, those who are elected, and by our city and state and what have you. So I'd love if you have any information about some of the candidates that maybe have mental health as part of their platform, or have stated anything that might be applicable to mental health care, and the things that I find super important, especially right now during a pandemic when people are really having a lot thrown at them and really are at a point where it's become traumatizing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think now more than ever, everyone's keenly aware of like how important your mental health is, right. And like how you're coping and what tools you're using. And I know for me, just personally, like I've developed a meditation practice that I'm like pretty straight on every single day, and I can tell the difference in my attitude and my outlook and my ability to get stuff done when I have like started my day with a clear focus and path forward. And I think in a lot of ways too, because of COVID, it's made it like mainstream, if you will, that like this is hard. Everybody's dealing with a different challenge, being, not quarantined, but being, isolated, whether that's because they have small children in their house or because they have, they live by themselves, or they're, like in a personal story, my grandparents are really having a hard time when they're used to seeing their kids and their grandkids all the time. And so I think it's brought that kind of conversation front and center, which is great, especially for some of the races that are on our ballot this November. One that I am really excited about is, so in civil district court, there's a program where I think it started last year, where they actually divert mental health related charges out of jail and into like outpatient treatment centers. And so there's a couple of candidates on the ballot that are going to be for that program, and they're going to want to shore up that program, find funding for that program and continue it. And then there's others that are not, they don't see the importance of it, or they don't think it's something worth continuing to invest in. So knowing kind of what you know about where we are as a city and what we're kind of dealing with, not only with COVID, but just generally mental health challenges, having a judge that understands the need for that program is important. And to that point, like the school board, there's a really great candidate, Erica, who has Martinez, she's running for District 6, that has a background in mental health and in trauma-informed care. And so she's really hoping to bring that conversation front and center. And it's been really interesting to see when you watch all these forums that are happening virtually, other candidates, not only in her race, but in other districts of the school board, are talking about the challenges our students are facing and how to best serve them. And so I think it's not just COVID's been really hard, obviously, for 1,000,001 reasons. This is hopefully one of the silver linings that we're, like you said, normalizing mental health and normalizing that we all need to pay attention, and not only for ourselves, but our community.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've had so many people reach out to me, from kids at my teachers at my kids' school to teachers across the country, news outlets, what have you, asking about trauma and trauma-informed care, because that's kind of that's my thing. I love,
because that's your background, right?
Working in that population, and that's something that I have a lot of passion about. And unfortunately, at this point, it has really affected people in ways that have caused elements of trauma. And our kids, especially, whether it be because they're doing Zoom classes right now, or they don't see their friends, or because of their age, their friend isn't reacting to them on Zoom in a way that they think they're supposed to, not knowing that their friend can't even see them because of how it's set up.
It's hard.
Right. There's so much. And then, kids that maybe have different learning styles or different needs with learning, all those things are affected by whether or not it's a virtual learning. Even if it's a distance learning in person, that's still going to affect how things are done. It's going to be different from last year. And those are things that, it's best not to ignore. A lot of folks I see, probably 99% of the folks I see, have some level of experience with trauma, whether it be in childhood or adulthood or both. And oftentimes it's not having that addressed at the time that's led to them seeing me.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's amazing to think because, you know, with our city, I heard a statistic that was like jarring the other day. It was like 1 in 4, not 1 in 4, our children in New Orleans public schools have PTSD 4 times the national average. And that's before COVID. So you think between like drugs or gun violence, or maybe it's like food scarcity, like our kids are already feeling the challenges of their home experiences and also their school environments. Whether that's like their charter being pulled and their school closing mid-year, you know, like that's traumatic, like to have your school all of a sudden not be there. So I think you have all that already kind of happening in our community. And then you add the fact that all of a sudden, like I think about my 5-year-old, we picked her up from school on a Friday and then that was it. Like they announced over the weekend that school was closed. And so she's 5 and we're like, oh, it's flu week. You know, we'll be back at school soon. That was in March. You know, so like she's, you know, missing her friends and she's the only child. So she doesn't have like other kids to play with. There's no like park we can go to and like have her interact with other kids. So I think you have that happening with like our children, but then also like the parents are worried and stressed. And like, I know I'm thinking like, what, is she going to be okay? Like, is she her social development going to survive COVID? Like, well, it's all it sounds kind of trivial and silly, but at the same time, like it's something that I think all parents are thinking about. And that's just from like a family perspective. You have like the economic and social challenges that are happening because of COVID and alongside COVID with like racial injustice. And so it's just a lot going on. So mental health is really something that's so important. Yeah. So to have candidates that are talking about it is incredible.
Absolutely. So, you know, again, folks should, you know, educate themselves. We've listed these resources here in our chat. So folks can look at their ballots, get their Go Vote app, mark it on there, make sure it's on data so you can bring it in when you're voting and not be stressed out about it. Prepare yourself, be ready to go vote. Please, you know, take advantage of the ability we have as Americans to vote and to have a say in what's happening in your community. As we've been saying, so much is happening in New Orleans right now. And being able to have your voice heard about that is really a privilege that we all should be taking advantage of and really, you know, doing our part.
Yeah. It's encouraging. So, I mean, I think they say nationally, Americans vote, like our voter turnout is like 33%. It's like so low as to what, you know, we could be doing. But then I'm hearing stories and reading articles that are saying that like early votes in those states that have already started are already at like 20% of the voting population. So we're already kind of inching towards that threshold of what normally votes, even before, you know, early voting is kicked off across the country. So hopefully I find that encouraging. I hope people are engaged and they're taking the time to wait in line for 11 hours to make sure their voice is heard because we know it's important.
Well, and it's also a way to take some control back because right now, you know, when we've been experiencing this pandemic for, you know, over 6 months, a lot of things feel out of our control, especially when you're looking at the news and things just seem all kinds of wackadoodle. But you do have control over who you vote for. And as we've said, what happens locally, and that affects you more than maybe you realize. So taking some time, educating yourself, and then deciding where you're going to go vote. As I said, we listed all these resources here. You can even become a poll worker. That's another thing we didn't actually mention. But you know, if you want to get more involved and make sure people can vote safely, that's something you can do as well. And we have that.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's so important because you think about, I know when I go to my polling place, it's like these little old ladies who've been poll workers for 40 years. Right. And those are not the people we need out sitting in the public right now during COVID. So I think a lot of those people are going to be opting out because for their safety or going because they feel like no one else is going to do it. So I think it's going to take people younger who have the flexibility and have the health to go and to be a poll worker. I mean, it's sitting in the polling place and checking people's registration, having them sign the book. I mean, if you're a voter, you know the ladies you interact with, and they set the machine up and help you cast your vote. And so if it's something that is a way to get involved and to feel like you're a part of the process and to give back to your community, as you mentioned earlier.
and take some control. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. So if folks want some more information, there's my website. We have more episodes of Big Easiest Ways to Wellness. So you can share that with friends who maybe missed our episode today live. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and do all those things. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your passion about voting.
Too much information at you.
Yeah, and everyone take advantage. Look at the sites that we have listed. Encourage your neighbors. Get someone who maybe wasn't going to vote and drag them along with you. Yeah. Have some fun. It's the closest thing you can do to having a party right now. So,
and one other thing. I just want to mention one other thing. So as you're doing your research, let's say you find a candidate that you're like super inspired by, you're really excited about. I can tell you for sure, every single candidate right now needs volunteers because of COVID. Yeah. It's really hard to get out and meet people and to do that. And there's plenty of ways to volunteer from your house. You can make phone calls.
You can be texting people.
You can text.
Yeah.
You can put a sign in your yard or drop. We're doing a lot of candidates are doing like what they call like lit drops. So it's not knocking doors. It's just literally hanging tags or dropping postcards like in the door jams to help them get the word out about their races and their candidacy. So, and every candidate's got a button on their website to donate and to volunteer. So definitely encourage anybody who's watching, if they feel like they're super excited about somebody, to extend any time that you do have to help them.
And I want to give out a shout out to Daisy, who's going to go be a poll worker. I love that.
That's awesome.
Thank you for doing that. That's great. A great way to give back to your community, and not as hard as you may think, right? And then you learn all the things, and you can tell all your friends all the time.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for tuning in.